welcome back to Daytime. You can find us at rogerstv.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can tweet us at Daytime London. Still to come, we still have a great trivia question for you to answer to get some awesome prizes. We will be once again visiting more from the London Spring Home and Garden Show. Rick Ho from London Audio will be here to show us some really cool stuff that he's already setting up that looks just mind-boggling already.
There you go.
Mind-boggling.
Are you warmed up?
Yeah, I'm getting pretty warm.
Time to stretch it out a little. Kari Schneider is here from Empower Conditioning, and this time around we're talking about the importance of stretching. It is really important, and it's one of the things working with you that I realized, for one, I never stretched before, and two, after working with you a little bit and stretching, how much better I functioned when I was actually working out.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Nice to know. Okay, so do you guys stretch?
No.
Well, now you
now
do.
I do.
But no, you don't.
I don't.
Are you doing anything though?
Yeah, even when I was training for my marathon, my theory was if I'm going to stretch, I have to do it right. If I'm not going to stretch, I might as well just completely not stretch.
Lots of people skip it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are kind of caught into the tradition of, oh, you know, I'm going to do a little something and then stretch it out and then I'm going to get into what I'm going to do.
Right.
But most people's activities are, well, if we think of, say, tennis or hockey or running or soccer, like we were just talking about, all those things are very, they can be explosive, very dynamic.
Sure.
A lot of them change in direction, things like that. The last thing you want to do is do a static stretch prior to that activity. So the timing is really key. The timing is important. So you want to make sure that you're doing a preparatory activity in front, so something that neurologically activates you and warms you up, and save the static stretching for after or post-event or post-workout, whatever it is.
Okay.
So before, it's going to be dynamic type preparatory activating stretching, neurological activation, and after it's going to be the lengthening of the tissue when you're finished your movement.
I think a lot of people, the general population, don't realize that there are different types of stretching and different times for those different types of stretching as well. We've got some footage here. We'll have a look, and if you can walk us through the type of stretching and why we're doing it and when we should do it.
Okay, so what Paul's doing here, he's doing some foam rolling. You can't, there we go. You can tell that he's rolling over a foam roller, and it's somewhat soft but fairly firm at the same time. He's getting into his lats, he was into his lower back, and this is the kind of thing you can do as a pre or a post, and it's almost like giving yourself a little bit of a mini massage, but this is the thing that you're going to feel where you've got the knots, where you've got the tightnesses, and where you need to pay more attention to. The quads and the hip flexors, getting into the IT band on the side where he is right now, is really tough. Now he's doing a static stretch for the hamstrings and lower back. So he's doing a seated fold. You might see something like this in yoga sometimes. But this one's really tough because this is where people get really tight through the lower back and the fascia. Here he's doing a quad stretch, and he could also be doing something like this standing that'll get into the hip flexor more as well. This will get a little bit into the hip flexor, but he could do a standing one and get hip flexor and quad.
So these static stretches, they should be done post-workout?
After, yeah, and you need to be warm for it, and that's when you're usually nice and warm, you've done your work, and now you're doing the lengthening after, because if you do this type of lengthening, you're really not going to be explosive at all after doing this type of movement. So he just did a calf stretch, or a gastrocnemius is the real anatomical word, and now he's doing a pectoral stretch. So he's getting the pectoralis major, pectoralis minor, and holding that. That'll get through the shoulder. Especially after running, this is one thing that people always miss. He's getting a neck stretch.
Yeah.
And that neck, he's getting sternocleidomastoid, that side neck muscle, plus he's getting into the top trap fibers that attach onto the head. Very important after running because you've taken all this impact. Your shoulders are bouncing up and down thousands of times. And all that eccentric force, that's where you get all those tight shoulders right after you've done that running. And so key to stretch out the neck after running. You'll notice if you do long runs, you start to get shoulder pain, and you wonder why. You're like, okay, it's my legs that are working. Why are my shoulders getting pain? Well, they're doing tons of eccentric contractions every single landing. So those are some key stretches post-workout, post-run, soccer, or whatever it happens to be.
Worst case scenario, if we don't stretch, what can ultimately happen?
Usually what happens is you avoid the areas that feel yucky stretching, and those are usually the areas that need the most help. So what's going to happen is you're not going to have the range of motion that you need. If you've got an area that's really loose, limber, you don't really need to spend a lot of time stretching it. Might maintain it, one little movement towards that area, but the time needs to be spent on the really tight stuff. Usually for most people it's the hamstrings. We're sitting a lot. We're sitting here with my knee bent, so my hamstring is shortened, and they usually get really tight, and that's when all of a sudden the weekend warrior heads out, does a little ultimate frisbee, and oop, pop, twing.
Well, so is that the main advantage of stretching? Is the stretching going to improve my performance, or is it going to keep me injury-free?
There's research that looks at that, and there's some controversial research out there that goes, oh, stretching isn't going to prevent an injury, but really what happens is that if you don't have the range of motion and then you try to go into that range of motion, something's going to give. You're either going to strain something or you're going to find the range out of a different joint. So for instance, if your hips don't have the range of motion, you usually get it from your knees or your back. So something is going to take more trauma because one area doesn't have enough movement. So that's what you want to make sure that you're addressing if you've got those areas that are really tight and tighter than another area on your body.
For someone who doesn't, partake in, recreational sport, just the average person that works out here and there, but perhaps wears heels and crosses their legs a certain way every day.
Who are you talking
I'm
about?
just saying, no, but should that person also be doing
Lengthen it out.
stretching?
That person is going to run the risk of, as soon as they go into a different shoe or change the angle of how they're moving, then all of a sudden they go, oh, I feel really tight in a certain area, or I'm getting a cramp in a certain area, or worst case scenario, I tweak something and I get a strain, a muscle strain in a certain area because it never goes into that angle. So it's very foreign to that particular joint. So that's when the little Achilles things, the calf things, the hamstring things come in. So this is what I would call preventing what your life does to you, or if it was a sport specific angle, preventing what your sport does to you. So, I'll see a lacrosse player come in or a hockey player come in, one shoulder's in like this, they're shooting side, they're hunched over because they do their sport so much. And so we've got tightnesses through the hip flexors, through the shoulder, through the pec, and we gotta work that out so that they don't become susceptible to something worse than just a tightness.
Perfect. So stretch. All you gotta do is just stretch.
Do a little yoga. Yoga helps.
All right, thanks.
Fantastic.
No problem.
Thanks, Kari.
Stretch it out. Feel good,
Exactly. EmpowerConditioning.com for more tips and great info. It's time now to take a look at our pet of the day.